Welcome to My Life. We're here with our second episode with Connie Miller at the Treetop Lodge.
Welcome again.
And we are bringing a couple of other guests into the program here. Connie, who are these guys?
This is y'all.
Y'all.
Because I name my stuffed animals and such after whoever gives them to me.
Oh.
Well, this was a whole group of people, and I said I have to name him after y'all. This is my Mutter guy.
Your Mutter. Oh, from the Tough Mutters.
Tough Mutter. See his little T-shirt? It says Tough Mutter.
Ah. I'm going to hold it up so you can see that. Yeah, he made it all the way through, by the way.
Yes, and clean.
All right.
And then this is a Pegasus. And her name is obviously Peggy. And
Peggy Pegasus.
She tops our Christmas tree that we have down here every Christmas.
Oh.
We have a very traditional tree at this end, and it's a huge tree, and she tops the tree. Because she's the only Pegasus. There's a lot of unicorns and bears and stuff, but she's the only Pegasus.
So, honey, you're one of a kind.
That's right.
All right. We were talking about the schools that you go to, you went to.
Mm-hmm.
We got through your elementary school. Mm-hmm. What was the middle school that you went to? Do you
Epler
remember?
Junior High. It was a junior high then. Actually, the biggest thing then was probably I started band in 5th grade.
What'd you play?
Started with clarinet, and I loved it. And I had a bit of an aptitude. So by the time I got into junior high, I met another band director. First I had Mr. Naraki, who was the high school director, and he would come over to the elementary school. Then I met Lou Gonda in 7th grade, and Mr. Gonda was an amazing man with a very amazing history, and sadly he's gone. But he got me into bass clarinet because I could play all the high registers on clarinet, but I didn't like it. So he thought, well, if you can play bass clarinet, you get that low tone. So when they decided to move the freshman class up to the high school, nobody was going into varsity band because they didn't know any of us. We were all just freshmen. But by some twist of fate, Mr. Gonda and Mr. Naraki decided they needed a bass clarinet in the varsity band. So I went straight in. I was one of only 7 that went straight into marching band and varsity band and concert band through my high school career.
Now, did you take any lessons on the clarinet?
No, just in school.
So you learned basically on your own and during band practice.
And I eventually played contrabass clarinet also.
Wow.
Which is funny because when Larissa was in school, she started with clarinet and then moved to bass and then moved to contrabass also. When she followed the same path. So.
Was it harder to play bass and contrabass clarinet? I mean, these instruments are big, folks.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I never played the bass in front of me because I was uncomfortable. I always played it with a strap on my side.
Yeah.
And I loved that low, rich tone. And the contrabass was even better. That I did have to play on the floor because it was so tall.
Did you get out of marching, though?
Oh, no.
You don't march with those things.
I'll tell you what. Mr. Naraki wanted to start a flag corps. Nobody had a flag corps then. So he asked me to arrange the first flag corps. And I did. And we did routines, and we marched, and we did the halftime shows. We had uniforms, because we still had majorettes then, too. That were very good. And I eventually helped the other high schools in the area set up their flag corps also.
And this is another art. I mean, to me, marching and making formation.
And we marched. We high-step marched.
Yes, because, folks, I got to tell you, I have always believed that God did not make us to march and play an instrument at the same time.
But you know, once you get into the rhythm, you can march in a parade for 8 or 10 miles and it doesn't feel like it.
That's okay if you're playing the same song all the time.
Well, see, we never did. When we did parades, we changed constantly, and our halftime show was different every week. It's not like it is now. I mean, we worked it every single week, but I'm very proud of that. I was recently in touch with Mr. Naraki. I sent him a message. Chris had lost a favorite teacher of his had passed suddenly. And he said, I never got a chance to tell him what he meant to me. And I thought about that. So that very night I sent a message to Mr. Naraki, and I said, you're never going to remember me. He's long retired. He came back with, well, you started the first flag corps, and you did this, and you did that. He remembered me. And then I said, well, of course, I was probably a handful of trouble. That's why you remembered me. He said, no, not at all. You were fun and exciting and talented.
How did you learn all that stuff?
I don't know. I was encouraged. See, I didn't get a lot of encouragement in my life at home.
Really?
So when I did come into something or find an interest or find someone who was interested in me and encouraged me, that's where I found that I had talents and enthusiasm for things.
Was it that your folks were busy with other things, or what?
My parents were married on July 4th of 1953. My brother was born 9 months later, and that was their complete family. And when I surprised them 4 years later, I was not mistreated, but I was a responsibility, and I always knew it because they said it. You know, they told me I was unplanned and unexpected, but that they would meet their responsibility. And they
Wow.
did. You know, it
Wow.
wasn't as warm and fuzzy as I would have liked.
So what was it that interested you about not just playing the clarinet and the contrabass and all that, but the marching and the formations?
Being
I mean,
a part of something like that, Mr. Naraki was very creative in his halftime shows and his choreography and such. And being a part of this large group, you're one little piece, but you're such an important piece. And I do love performing. I was very involved with drama, and I did writing and producing and acting and performed with the musicals and such in school. And I just love that feeling where I was part of something really great creatively that was going on. You know, I like being on my own, but I loved being a part of a larger group. You know, look at what we did together. Look at this sound. We did Victory at Sea one year in concert band. That still remembering it brings chills. It was so amazing. Just everybody's and he was big about bringing out people's individual talents.
yeah.
And it was just wonderful. So
It kind of sounds like high school was the pinnacle of your educational experience.
well, I actually could have graduated early. I was on an independent study program basically from about 5th grade on because they didn't know what to do with me. And
Is that because you were so far ahead?
I was, and I was bored all the time. So they kept giving me the next year's worth of work. So by the time I got to about 8th grade, they didn't have much left for me. But that's when I really got into music. But the funny thing is they wanted to start a program to see if high school students could handle college work while they were in high school. And I was the first one to do that. We didn't have computers and such, so it was by the phone, and occasionally I'd drive to U of M or MSU. All these years later, my daughter was the first one at Oxford to be invited into that same program.
So it was like early college.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. All those years later, I was the first then, and then she was the first all these years later.
Well,
So
now tell me, what were some of the classes they had you doing that way?
we had our choice, but I was very interested in history and English, that sort of thing at that time. I didn't
Yeah.
like the sciences. Sciences just upset me. And I couldn't really do music and creative things at that distance. So I concentrated on the classics. I'm a big reader. And those sorts of things, history and English primarily, that's what I liked. And I was working full-time. I was
were
in,
you doing?
in retail management when I was in high school.
Really? Management? What store?
Several. I worked for Lord & Taylor and Lerner's and Mary Ann's, the women's shops.
The big ones.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought that was it. So when I was offered 2 full scholarships when I graduated, I turned them down because I was already working in what I thought was my chosen field.
Really?
And plus my parents said, well, you know, you already have a job. You should give the scholarships to somebody who really needs them. So yeah, okay. Plus, anyway. So yeah, but I thought that was it. I liked retail. I liked the creativity of it, and I liked dealing with people, and I liked dealing with staff. But eventually that was not what I ended up doing, obviously.
Let's go back to the music thing.
Yes.
Did you enter into any competitions, MSBOA
Yep.
or stuff like that?
And I tended to choke up, and I would perform either brilliantly or horribly. So I got 1s and 4s. Our group as a whole always performed tremendously. But me personally, depending on what was going on in my life, I would, like I said, I could play it perfectly in the warm-up room and then walk in and just freeze. Or the opposite would be true.
Well, we're going to have to come back to that in just a minute because we have to take a break. Don't go away. Back with our own Connie Miller here in My Life. We're talking about your high school musical adventures and
Yep.
retail adventures. You had all kinds of adventures.
I did, and like I was saying before, there were certain teachers. Linda Kreft, when I was in junior high, I just couldn't connect with algebra, no matter what I did. And she took time with me a couple hours a day after school a few times, just really took the time, and suddenly it clicked because she took the time and nobody else did. And it was the same way with Mr. Gonda and Mr. Naraki. They just, just put me in a place where they really trusted me and allowed me to really shine. And I'm really grateful to that because, like I said, I didn't have a lot of that growing up. I was just expected to bring home straight A's and be home on time and not get arrested. So I did all that.
As you were getting into some of this, did your folks begin to become impressed at
No.
what you were doing?
Not terribly. I did find out much later that they did occasionally talk about me to other people and say nice things. But they weren't, they very rarely came to concerts and such. They just weren't terribly interested.
Yeah.
So it was my thing.
I guess they weren't into music much, huh?
No, I guess not. It's just the way it was. I'm not saying they went out of their way not to be supportive, but they also didn't go out of their way to be supportive. Not that I expected them to attend every program that I did for 7-8 years. But once in a while would have been nice.
What was your favorite kind of music back then?
Oh, I love the musicals because a musical tells a story from start to finish. I love the classical stuff. I love swing music. We didn't get to play a lot of it, but I really enjoyed it. And just really almost any kind of music. Christmas was always fun, but just being part of that group and some of those really talented people I was able to play with. And then I did some other orchestra things, some honorary orchestra things. And
Did you get into any jazz bands or anything like that?
Not really. I liked being part of the big group.
Yeah.
More so. And I got to do some countywide things and that's some different things and be part with other people that I hadn't met before, an honors band and things like that.
Did you win any awards or get any citations for any of this stuff?
Well, I earned my letter and I got like, through the years I did. I don't mean to not, to be sketchy, but I really didn't pay that much attention to it. For me, it was the experience.
Yeah.
You were expected to go to competitions, so you did, and then it would shine well on the program. So I was all about that. It's like getting an award for Connie's Kitchen is great. I'm very proud of it, but it's because of the incredible group effort that goes into it. It's not just about me.
Yeah.
So, and I felt the same way then.
Well, I know all this was fun that you were talking about, but other than that, what did you do for fun in high school?
In high school, like I told you, I was in school an hour or two a day. If there was anything going on with drama or band, I'd hang out for that, and then I worked. So that was about it.
So you didn't have a lot of free time.
No, I didn't. And all my friends were older. I was never terribly comfortable with people my own age. And most of my friends had graduated, so if I socialized at all, it was generally with those people. But I worked a lot, and in those days, you just took all the hours you could get.
Sure.
So, and being in management especially, I couldn't just clock in and out at my own free will.
What year did you graduate from high school?
1976.
As you were going through your junior and senior year, what were you thinking as far as your future was concerned?
Retail. I thought I'd be in
You
retail.
just wanted to hang in there.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge.
And did those folks that you were working for encourage you to hang in there
Some
with
did.
that?
Some did. But I was pretty independent. And the thing I enjoyed the most, especially when I was at Learners, is giving people their first jobs
Yeah.
and training them. And those girls stayed with me. I didn't have any kind of turnover. And I ended up going to their weddings and seeing their first kids. And for me, that was a thrill because they really felt like they were accomplishing something, and I loved doing that, and it wasn't just a constant turnover for them.
But did any of your bosses kind of hint to you that, you're really doing great now, but if you really want to go someplace in this, you need a college degree?
Not really. I think the emphasis is probably more now than it was then. Then I was working hard, doing a good job, and making them a lot of money, and that's really all they cared about. I mean, they did want to move me to other bigger stores and that, but I liked where I was, and I didn't want the commute. I mean, I lived in Utica, and I was working at Lakeside Mall.
Sure.
So I just like to really expand from where I am. I wasn't into moving around a lot.
Was Lakeside pretty new then?
Lakeside opened on March 2nd in 1976.
76? Wow.
The Crowleys and Sears stores opened December before, and then we had a big ice storm on March 2nd, and that was the day that my high school band played the dedication. And then I said goodbye to everybody and took my uniform off and went to work.
Boyfriends?
Lots of them. Got engaged a few times in high school. And,
You did?
And after, yeah. Ask my husband, he'll tell you. I was very serious about relationships. I didn't like to flit around a lot. So, I mean, they were long-term relationships. With good guys. But, at that age especially, you're changing so much that what seemed to make sense here, a year or two down the road maybe doesn't make sense. So I didn't finally actually get married till I was 25.
Okay, so you were well out of high school by
yeah.
that time. Okay, graduation day's coming up. What are you thinking?
Graduation day.
Your graduation, high school graduation.
What am I thinking? It was fun, but it was just another day and I had to go to work right after.
Yeah. Isn't it funny
So-
how that works sometimes?
I'm a very focused person and I had a responsibility. You know, people were kind enough to give me a job, so I was going to do everything I could to do that job as best I could.
Were you in a situation where you had to help out with the family for that?
No, just support myself.
Yeah.
My folks did give me my first car, which was a 68 Torino. I loved that car. But my mom would pay for my plates as a birthday present, but I paid my own insurance and gas and everything and maintained it myself. So I was very independent. And like I said, there wasn't a lot of extra money laying around anyway.
Sure.
Plus, my brother was getting a lot of tickets and getting into trouble a lot, so the focus was
They were
kind of...
pretty busy with him.
Yeah, the focus was more on him, so...
All right, so the day after graduation, who were you working for?
At that time, I would have been with Learners. Yeah, because I went from Learners to Lord & Taylor.
But all of a sudden, the music goes away, the acting goes away. That had to be a little bit sad.
No, because my joy in it is still there. You know, I did work with a couple of companies that put on fashion shows and such. They would travel. I worked with Oscar de la Renta at one point.
Oh, you did?
He came to Lakeside for a big show. Iman was the model I was assigned to. Beautiful. She is as stunning now as she was then. I don't know how she does it. Gracious, lovely woman.
Was this right after you got out of high school?
Yeah, it would have been in that first, well, a couple of years because Lord & Taylor didn't open till like maybe 78, so. And that was very exciting. And then I got offered a job with his company, but I didn't want the travel. And then it came up several times. I would coordinate with other groups within the mall or within the stores to put on these shows and create them and do all these things. And then I would get offered jobs to go work with them.
Why didn't you want to travel?
I don't know. It's not that I didn't want to travel. I think I know it's a weird thing because it's not like I was all that terribly happy at home. Of course, I moved out when I was 20. I bought a house.
Oh, you did? You bought a house.
I did.
You signed on the dotted line and
did.
bought a... Tell me about that.
Well, it was very exciting. Eventually, a couple years later, I got very sick with what I now know is fibromyalgia, but at the time I didn't know. And I ended up having to give it up and move home because I had to take some time off work and such. And then it was years later before... Well, I also had ulcers then, which were really bad. And so there came a point when I just had to stop everything for a while.
Were you a workaholic?
When I like what I'm doing, you know, I don't consider it work. If you love what you're doing, it's not work, you know. And I loved it. I loved my accomplishments. I won contests. I won a TV. You know, in different things. We had these competitions and such. And my crew was always so great, and they were so getting in there and
What did
doing
you have to do to win a TV?
I think that was a dress sale, a certain number of dresses within a certain period of time. And I got the whole crew involved, and I told them whoever sold the most dresses, I would buy them the dress of their choice.
Wow.
And we blew everybody away, and then I got a TV.
And your position when this happened was?
Store manager.
Store manager. Was this right after high school?
That was Learners, so yeah, it was during and then, yeah, just after.
Store manager. Hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Do you love local sports? Whether it's Oxford High School or Parks and Rec, you can buy copies of each game. To purchase your copy, call us at 248-628-9658 or give us an email at manager@occtv.org or talk to us at the next game. Hopefully we'll see you there.
Back with our own Connie Miller. We're talking about your involvement in retail, in the fashion business. You helped put on a professional fashion...
Several.
Hey, well, you built up a reputation, obviously, when you did that.
I did. But then I kind of branched out of fashion, and I was working at Austin Galleries, which was an art gallery.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that until they got indicted. And so then I left there, and I eventually went into real estate appraisal.
Okay, when you say they got indicted, I don't remember what that was about.
Well, we had legitimate artists, and I would represent only the artists that I had actually met. But then we had art that was very questionable in its origin.
God.
And they eventually got into a lot of trouble for that. And I wasn't part of their trouble. I didn't testify against them. I just got out of it. And eventually when I guess I'd already moved to Northville. The guys next door had an appraisal firm, so I started working for them.
At what point during all of this did you marry your first husband?
1983. I was 25.
Okay, was that when this all happened?
Yeah, well, he was in retail also, which is how we met. So the kind of things kind of paralleled a lot. I'd like to stay with a job for a long time, but when we moved to Northville, then Churchill's, he worked for Churchill's, and the family sold the business. So I got him started in real estate appraisal. So we were still working together there. And then I went on to another firm, and then he went on to another firm.
Ah, so you were living in Novi?
Northville.
Northville, rather.
Downtown
okay.
Northville. Yeah.
All right. Well, that was really a blossoming area back then, especially Novi with the mall out there and everything.
I worked
wasn't
at 12
it?
Oaks for a while.
Did you?
I've worked in all the malls.
Okay, real estate appraisal. That's a lot different than what you've done before.
I'll tell you what.
What brought you into that?
I was sitting on the back deck at my house one day, and I knew the guys, they were brothers that had started the firm next door, and they came over and said, "Do you have some spare time? We need some typing done." And so I said, sure. It was the appraisal forms. They were typed
Sure.
then. And it was so fast. I mean, I could turn out both sides with no mistakes so quickly. So eventually it was, well, will you work at the office with us? So I did, and eventually got into the computer part of when the computers came in. And it was fun. It was interesting. I mean, I did predict the crash that happened a few years ago, because they were lending enormous amounts of money with no credit and, nothing to back it up. So it was kind of scary. But that was
Yeah.
in the 80s when it was really booming, and we were busy. So it was fun, and it was something different every day. Then I eventually went to work with another firm where I dealt with all the training of new appraisers, and I also held seminars for realtors to get them on the same page as the appraiser. Just because you sold the house for $300,000 doesn't mean the appraiser's going to tell you it's
That's
worth
right.
it. So let's work together before you make the sale, so the appraisal will then... And that was really fun. I just kind of made that whole thing up, and then I started working with realtors, and it was really valuable. It cut down everybody's time a lot.
Were you self-employed at this time, or did you work for another
I was an
firm?
independent contractor.
Okay.
But I worked through Kinsroth in Northville and then Blackacre Appraisal in Birmingham.
I see.
Yeah.
That's a very technical area, appraising.
Yeah, it's much more so now.
Yeah.
I took a very common sense approach to it. Of course, there was the licensing and the rules and everything you had to
Sure.
follow, but it was easy enough to figure out. And when the computers came in that would do all your calculations for you,
Right.
so you'd know when
What
you
a
were in
difference,
guidelines.
huh?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it was fast. I mean, I don't like computers because I'm convinced there's a self-destruct button and I'm going to find it. but it was fun. And then towards the end of my time at Blackacre, they kind of call them a nervous breakdown, but I just was really exhausted because I tended to work like 18 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So I took some time off, and when I went back to work, I was sitting at my desk, and I thought, this is not what I want to do. So I quit.
What were you thinking that you did want to do?
I didn't know. I just knew that I had nothing creative in my life, that I was empty. I wasn't terribly happy in my marriage, but I was committed to my marriage. And I just had to make a change of some sort. And so what eventually happened was bought the house in Oxford, moved out here. Things were okay financially, and my health was better. And there was this voice in my head that had been screaming at me for years that she wanted to be born. So it was time to have Larissa. And she was born in '94. And she was wonderful from the get-go. And eventually my marriage failed, which I place no blame there.
What year did that happen?
2000.
Okay.
And it was, my mother died in '98. In the last couple of weeks of her life in the hospital, I spent with her. And I finally said, I have things I need to say, and I need you to hear, because you're going to die in a couple of weeks. And the one thing that she said, I mean, we'd never been close, we'd never been emotional or anything else. She said, you've got to get out of your marriage. Well, there's still enough left of you to be a good parent to Larissa. And I said, she says, you're not that good an actress. She said, you're miserable, he's miserable, and you're not going to be good parents, either one of you.
Mm-hmm.
So when she died, that was really started the process, made me face up to the reality and start the process in my own mind, getting my health together, getting my head together. And it took me a good year and a half to get strong enough. And then we were divorced in October of 2000.
How old was your daughter at that time?
5.
That had to be a challenge.
6. Yeah, but she's a good kid. She's a resilient kid. She knew she was loved. I mean, he wasn't so good on keeping up on that end of it, but I told him, I said, just be that weekend fun dad. You know, you don't have to deal with any of the responsibilities. And by that time, Chris and I were friends, and Chris had nothing to do with my marriage breaking up because I didn't even know him. I didn't meet him until a year and a half later. I met him in '99. But in about the time my divorce was being finalized, Larissa started suggesting we should get married. And I said,
She liked him.
That's insane. First of all, you've told everybody in town he's your big brother. And you act like he's your big brother. I said, he's 18 years younger than I am. He's not going to be in Oxford that long. He's fresh out of U of M. And this is just a stopping point because he'd had offers in New York and Washington. Well, then he thought that was a pretty good idea. And he was going to rent a room from me because financially I lost everything with the divorce except the house. And then he said, well, I can't rent a room from you. It wouldn't be like living together. And I'm in love with you and it wouldn't be right. And I'm like, whoa. He said, we haven't even dated. He said, well, we could date forever. And we got married in January 2001.
Wow.
17 and a half years ago.
Now, what was your occupation at that time?
I had just started my cleaning business.
Okay.
Yeah, I had just started that because I needed something that was flexible so that I could be there for Larissa mornings, evenings, weekends, so I could set my own schedule.
Were you cleaning private homes?
Private homes and businesses.
Okay, all around the Oxford area?
Oxford, Orion, Clarkston. I loved it. I loved working with the people. I like cleaning because you start with a mess and you finish with clean and you can see the whole process. It's very, very satisfying. So, I mean, that's just kind of, it just seems like, I know I said that all quickly, but Chris and I have been married 17 and a half years. It's been wonderful and I'm happy.
And were you in the cleaning business from then up until now?
I still kind of am, just because Nancy won't let me go.
Right. Well, this is what the business you're in now isn't really the cleaning business.
Yes.
You're managing a property.
But I still do
here.
their house. I still
And,
clean their house.
You do.
Because
you're the only one she trusts.
That's part of the deal. She said I can't ever quit there.
Wow.
But that's fine because they're lovely people and it's.
So
all
how'd
good.
you get interested in unicorns?
That's Nancy. That's not me. I mean, they're cute and everything, but the whole unicorn thing, Nancy started that. I mean, it's all about being whimsical, stepping outside yourself, having some fun, and so that's what the whole unicorn thing is. You put on the unicorn head, nobody knows it's you. You can go dance.
If you could change anything in your life, would you?
No. Nope. It all brought me here. I'm happy and I'm healthy and I'm finally the person I've always wanted to be.
Well, we're glad you're here too. Connie Miller, thanks for joining us.
The Canine Stray Rescue League began with one woman's dog and a dream. In 1990, Carol Powell lost her dog and searched multiple animal control centers to find him. When she did so, she discovered perfectly healthy dogs needlessly euthanized due to limited space and decided to do something about it. She traveled to multiple animal control centers to buy dogs on death row and then sat outside supermarkets giving them away to healthy and loving homes. Around this time, Powell bought the property where Canine Stray Rescue resides to this day from a friend. There was only one building to house the dogs, and the rest remained outside in the cold. Flash forward to 2001 in Flint, when current president of the Canine Stray Rescue League, Lori Stevenson, met Carol Powell. Both passionate about dog rescue, they united their efforts and traveled across Genesee County to various animal controls to save dogs from euthanization. Until they found proper families, they often kept the dogs in their own homes. The numbers of rescued dogs grew, and Canine Stray Rescue League began to take shape. Powell and Stevenson ran it themselves with a board of directors. As their funding and popularity grew, they were able to purchase more housing for the dogs. Today, Carol Powell is retired, and keeping the dream alive, Lori Stevenson heads the canine group. She takes in dogs from all over Michigan and from states that border Ohio. Due to connections with a friend in Puerto Rico, she is able to take in strays there, still suffering from the aftermath of the hurricanes in 2017. Canine runs primarily on donations, so they're imperative to the League's survival. When asked how her rescue missions impact society, Stevenson replied that if we teach our children to have compassion for dogs, they'll treat everyone in their life with that same compassion and charity.